Thanks. Good morning. We can. Well, as he said, my name's Donovan, so I won't keep belaboring that point. I forgot to write it on my name tag, though. I realized I was thinking so hard about my off-the-cuff icebreaker that when Taylor asked me to come up with one of those a couple of days ago, and I just wrote something. And sorry if it felt like a test when you were coming in. I didn't mean it to feel so. No pressure, really. There's no wrong answers. Actually, maybe the more wrong, the better. So this is our group, Paperhand, and this is a little cardboard. Actually, it's a picture of a thing that I cut out of cardboard. We use recycled materials and all sorts of found objects to create these giant spectacles and theater pieces and productions and parades and just about and lots of things of that sort. We've been working together for about 15 years now. Has anyone here ever seen any of our shows, perhaps? All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed them more than a hand raise. But we do our shows at the Museum of Art every summer. Is one of our biggest, I guess, venues, and we also do it at the Forest Theater in Chapel Hill every year, the month of August. Basically, we do 6 weekends of shows. I just wanted to share with you. Oh, great! Thank you. We also have a show called The Longest Night, which is a full dome planetarium show at the Moorhead Planetarium, and it shows every weekend through February. If you want to check that out, it's hard to describe, but you sit in the dome, and the puppets and everything just sort of surround you, and it's quite an experience. I wanted to go back to our and just give a brief sort of overview of what Paperhand has done and is doing and what we're about. Really, what we're about, I think he said in his opening comments. We're about nurturing creative community, and we're about inspiring people as much as we can to sort of rise up together and create a beautiful life. Why not? It's a vision I think is worth holding out. And we got our start a good ways back. I mean, I guess it started back in childhood. Ding, one for me. Yeah, so I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, going to a school for creative and performing arts, and I was lucky enough to be able to be immersed in both art and drama and dance and other art forms. And something about all of that, I guess, stuck. And I guess I can call it either a blessing or a curse, but it's something I've had to carry with me, this sort of need to create and to synergize art forms and bring them together. It's just my particular passion, is to bring together art, theater, dance, writing. And so along the way, I met this guy here, Jan Berger, and he's when it says co-founder and co-artistic director, he's the other end of that co. And he and I started Paperhand 15 years ago. And we started making some pretty small shows, and we... okay, so yeah, childhood. And the shows that we did, we started all based around an environmental children's education festival called the Hall River Festival. I don't know if you all have heard of the Hall River, but it's one of our mighty rivers that flows through this state, and you should familiarize yourself with it if you don't know it. But we made some shows about the ecological state and also just what it means to care for a river and to live beside it, and people got excited. So we took some of the giant characters that we were making for things like that would come in, and there would be the rod puppet part happening, and then from behind the stage there would come out these giant birds or this tall green man, and this was a really iconic figure for us for many years, and it's actually one of our retired puppets that now is just mounted on the wall. But we started leading giant parades using the characters that we were creating for shows. All of these masks we created in a residency with kids, and they're basically animals, and we were telling some mythological tales, and we helped them make a bunch of animal masks and totems, and they were processing with them here at the Museum of Art in Valley.
You still do those?
Yeah, we do parades a lot. Oh, we do classes, yeah. So then we started doing something in Durham called the Procession of the Species, which was sort of in our earlier phases. We just started holding workshops and getting more and more people to make things and join us for these big celebrations of the planet, basically the creatures that live on the planet. We figure we live here, we can take care of the things that live here with us, alongside of us, and we can go down the whole road of what side of the political spectrum that puts me on, but to me it's not important. What's important is that as humans we move from our hearts and from a more centered, balanced place. More parades. These are just examples of parades that these were made in workshops, like this giraffe here by some children. And we started getting more and more ambitious with making giant puppets, and we started designing stilt costumes and wings, again, all made out of donated or found PVC is what the wings are made out of. We did have to buy some fabric. You can't find that stripy fabric anywhere. So we do have to break down and go to the store every once in a while. And, but then we started looking deeper into what kind of stories we wanted to tell. And those moths were attracted to this giant flame goddess. And then when they got too close, it flipped over, and this is the same puppet on either side, and it turned into this Day of the Dead inspired giant puppet that was hung in Centro for a while in Angela's restaurant. I don't know if anyone got a chance to see it there. We also had a big start to our artistic life in the political arena. We did a lot of marches and demonstrations and put our imagery behind different causes, not particularly any candidates or anything, but just different things that we thought were important. Here's an example. Along comes a pink cowboy. It happens. And all the little piggies just go and they want to eat from the trough of patriotism. And then they get all sated and they hop on the freedom bus, because everyone loves freedom. But uh-oh, it's not the freedom bus, it's the meat wagon. And the pink cowboy has changed taken off his hat, and looks like he's gonna butcher these pigs. Now you can see why now some people kind of say that Paperhand is not just for kids. Because we do look at things in their entirety. Humanity is not a perfect picture, so we don't somehow reflect humanity back in some sort of glossy, rosy way. We just reflect it back, and therefore people get to decide whether their kids are up for it. But in my opinion, kids can totally understand and not be traumatized by these things. Our stories are I would say, much less traumatizing than some Disney films. quite honestly. I mean, I watched Dumbo recently, and talk about traumatizing, the mother like in the cage, and Dumbo's like outside like reaching. It's like, whoa. Anyway, so we always try to bring it back to the whimsical, magical nature of the world. And so we try to personify natural things into living things. And then we got more and more ambitious. As you can see from this picture, we started making things sometimes 30 feet tall, and this person here is on stilts, and that's the moon and the sun, of course, and those tall figures are what we called star beings. So we were, again, just trying to take what could be the ordinary world and manifest it in a very whimsical and beautiful, magical way. And we generated more excitement. People at parades were getting very excited. We started making more and more things. These are some elements. We call them elementals. These we called the forgotten gods of simplicity. I don't know why, but that was the name that came. And they were just some of the ones that were featured in this show called A Shoe for Your Foot, which was one of our shows at the Forest Theater. And this basic type of puppet is essentially a rod puppet, and it's 3 puppeteers, one on the head and one on each wing or arm. And so this is us filling up the Forest Theater. I just wanted to give a little quick sort of overview of how we make things. This is all just trash, and not trash as in like stinky compost and like nasty trash, but old plastic bags and tarps and other things that we've collected together, and we wrap in tape and basically turn the form using tape and newspaper into the essential shape that we want, so that we don't have to use too much clay. Because as you can see from the scale of this, if we had to use that much clay, that would be impossible, and we couldn't really do that. So then we apply the clay on top of plastic so that the paper mache doesn't get all gunked up with clay. And once we finish paper macheing it, we paint it. And this is a giant river puppet that takes 6 to 10 people to carry. It has a long tail. And so during the show, what we do is we have volunteers come in from the community. We have our puppeteer holding the head, say, and leading the train, and then they'll just sort of be under the puppet in this dusty, dark, smelly situation, yelling back to the people, "Follow me!" And then it just kind of like go, and it kind of works out pretty okay, I guess. You know, we want to always keep that community element there. It's very important to us. A lot of the things that you see here, I mean, we never would have been able to do all this paper mache with just Jan and I. So we have interns that work with us every year, and we also have many hundreds of people who come and put layers of paper mache and do coats of paint and all sorts of things. So we're a very community-based art troupe. This is another image that gives an example of the kind of stories that we tell that are not really trying to push any certain political agenda, but yet they have a message, because I think that all art does, if it can be defined as art. It has something to say. Art is communication. So what we're communicating here is this giant beast of the wild. It sort of encompasses the wilderness. And along comes this, what we call the hero, which is in quotation marks, because what was that dragon doing to anyone anyway? It was just living its life in the wild. And along he comes with his big sword, you know how the heroes are, and basically kills the beast after a big battle. And upon the beast's body come these masses, seas of population, and the sea of humanity is what we called it. And the buildings rise up, and there's this giant black hole kind of lamprey kind of succubus thing back here. I don't know, forgive me. I don't know what it is. It's a giant consuming kind of beastie black hole thing. And out of that, after it consumes everything in sight, emerges this giant goddess, which is basically a representation of the earth and how the earth eventually reclaims everything, and the green will eventually sprout back through whatever layers of junk we put on. We actually had it emerge out through that the black hole. Somehow we pulled that off, and it came up and out, and it touches the beast, and the beast is resurrected, and then we would bring it up through the audience, and this is just me and a few of the puppeteers taking this beast of the wild up through the audience. And when I felt, I guess, one of the a really strong moment for me as an artist was in creating this scene, not knowing what the audience's response would be when we first carried it up and out through the audience. And I remember approaching the audience with it after the beast was resurrected. I mean, everyone loves a resurrection story. It's just kind of one of those things that are ubiquitous in human. But I saw some little girls from India who started approaching, approaching the beast like this, and coming down the stairs to meet us. And basically, I would say, a dozen or more children, just instantly their hands, as soon as I dipped it down for the first time, their hands all went up. And just, like simultaneously, their hands went up to reach out to touch this beast. And childhood, yes. I have a 2-year-old. I know exactly what that sound is about. And it just, I mean, I cried. The audience was crying. There was something about that moment that felt like I had arrived at what the type of activism that I want to do with my art. It's about making connections, and people felt connected to this creature as an embodiment of the wild in that moment. And for me, that was, I guess, the ultimate activism that I could do as an artist. To have people completely out of themselves. They're not thinking about any other aspect of their life except I want to connect and reach out and touch this creature. Oh, that's okay.
We'll see you soon.
Oh, bye. I should have worn the masks first, I guess. We started experimenting more with dance as well. And we use these characters as these in a piece called Morphos, which is we started out with the mask on our face. Actually, we started out with it here on the backs of our heads, and as we emerged from these curled up balls, no one could understand what was going on because we just looked like these disfigured things with the masks on the back of our head, and then we slowly got them around onto our faces, but we also did a bit where they were on top of our heads, so we were kind of like a bear-like creature. And then we eventually had them up on our hands so that we created sort of an elongated creature. And then I got married. I don't know. And these things showed up at my wedding, these giant chickens. That's me with the red beard, in case you couldn't tell. And Jan, basically, and some friends put on a puppet show at my wedding, which was pretty amazing. And then, as you can see, or maybe you can see right back there, the big surprise that no one was expecting except for Jan came rolling down the hill. This giant crane came running down the hillside and sort of like blessed us all, and it's under its wings. That's Chuck Davis. I don't know if y'all know Chuck Davis. He does a blessing at the Eno River Festival every year, And he loves to have the puppets just kind of be there with him and making it all sort of a big magnanimous event. This is us at the Museum of Art also. Actually just barely surviving because the wind is so intense right here in this picture. And I don't know if you can tell by these people's gesture, but they're like struggling at the top of the hill there at the museum, just to the right of Gyre or whatever. This next section is basically some commissions that we've gotten over the years. And many of them have come from people like Terry Dollar. I don't know if any of you all know Terry. She runs Artsplosion, and other groups in Raleigh. This was at the museum. This is called The Ancient Tree. It's a puppetry. It has puppets in it. And there's squirrels and owls, and there's the actual subterranean levels have ants and mites and earthworms and things crawling around. There's a tunnel that kids can go through one side, but the puppeteers sit inside this box and manipulate the owls and the other creatures as they pop out of different holes and things. That was a fun project. Some of you might know Rhea, which we originally called Mother of the Wild. Has anyone ever been to First Night and the People's Procession? No. Oh, yes. This was a commission from Artsplosion, and this is us building it in our studio. Again, we construct the hand out of scrap wood and plastic bags and other things and tape it all together. And then we paper mache. With things like a hand, you have to meticulously cut the fingers and cut everything off so that you can get it off in 2 directions. Otherwise, you can't pull it off. The face, we painted this large body that has, I don't know if you can see, but it's flora and fauna of North Carolina. So the idea was to make an embodiment of the land of North Carolina. So her head is the mountains, and then her long body that trails out behind her goes from the mountains to the sea, and sort of a gradation through the Piedmont down to the tail, which is the coast. And we used all North Carolina, the state everything: dogwood, cardinal, honeybee, Scotch bonnet is the state seashell. I don't know if y'all knew that. Just saying. We found out. We even used granite, the state rock, in the paint, and it made the paint sparkle. And this is it rolling down the street in Raleigh, barely fitting between the street lights. I hope you all recognize Frida. This was a commission that I did down in Florida, as you can tell by the Spanish moss. This was another Artsplosion commission, a giant caterpillar that takes about 30 people to carry. It actually does move, and you can put your hands inside of these things, and it does this big gobbling motion as you go along. And we would stroll around with it throughout Artsplosion. We made this dragon for the Carolina Ballet, and the ballet used it in their production of Sleeping Beauty, and I had a lot of fun making this dragon. I mean, I am a guy, and I like dragons too. I mean, and we had a lot of fun making, and so we put these big springs in its mouth, and we made it so that you can, when you pull this rope, it pulls tension on the springs, big door springs, and it really snaps shut. We were commissioned to make some jellyfish by the North Carolina Aquarium. Just caught the scuba diver going by. I thought that was... This was something we did on the state Capitol grounds. It's a giant cardboard castle that has 3 rooms, and they're connected by tunnels. And again, and children, as referring back to childhood once again, I think children love nothing more than a big cardboard box that they can crawl around in. And except maybe attention. I don't know. But they do really love it, and we try to provide these, and we get commissioned sometimes to just build an elaborate cardboard castle, and we've done several over the years, and I have one more at the end. That is one that we just did for first night this past year. These were commissioned by the Lost Colony down in Manio. It's a red wolf and a great egret, and they wanted to have animals present as people arrived to the Lost Colony. This is John Henry. We told the story of John Henry, which is a tall tale, or a story. I don't know however you want to call it, but it's a really great story where basically man versus machine, and he wins the race. I don't know if I'm just giving you a brief thing. He wins, but he dies. He sort of sacrifices himself by exerting himself to this degree to beat this machine and to show that humans were worth more than automated machinery. It's a powerful story. We did it in a show called As the Crow Flies, and another thing we did was the story of the Buddha, and this is Mara, who is like the king of the demons, the lord of the demons, who is challenging the Buddha and saying, you can't become enlightened, it's not possible. And he does anyway, and this is what the enlightenment seems like. We did that with a lotus flower, and we created a light here in the center of his, sort of like his heart chakra was. We also make robots. We like to really mix it up, and we're always challenging ourselves to make something new and different and not be stuck in the same, what I guess maybe people think our work looks all the same, but I think it looks different from itself, and we're trying to always explore. So we went to my farm in Saxapahaw, and we wanted to have some shots during the show, which was like showing like the good life and all the robots like living together on a little commune. and so we put my chicken up on one, and he's holding an egg. I don't know if you guys can see. He's got like a little egg. Like, look what I found. And this is my dog, Lily, who just happened to sneak into that shot, and I think it worked pretty well. But this is an old, again, these are all things that I found. This is a golf container for shipping your golf clubs. These are just cardboard boxes and tubing, cardboard boxes. This is a sonotube, which is used for concrete work, little pieces of PVC, and just really tons of little found objects that we just screwed and bolted together to make it into what might be seen as a robot. This inspired our little friend Taryn, who is my good friend Tarish Pipkins, who is one of the puppeteers in Love and Robots, that show. My son just got inspired, and so I just love this picture. He's so cute, and look at his little heart. His dad helps him a little. He's only like 4 in this picture. So again, with sticking with the theme of childhood, these are just a bunch of shots of puppets that I've made in residency and with kids, ninjas and birds. These are some cardboard trees that I make with kids at schools sometimes, and more school residencies. I did a good bit of work with some kids who were on the spectrum of autism, and a series of residencies I did through the Arts Center. And these are some of the masks that they made. And then I worked in a high school making The King and I, and we wanted to take that part of The King and I where Uncle Tom's cabin, or that section, and turn it into, because in the original play or the Broadway production, it had like a whole aside where there was like dancers, and it was just a real elaborate thing. So they wanted to make it into a thing, and so this ended up being Simon of Legree, and these were the guards, and we made those all with high school students at East Chapel Hill High. I did some work in Asheville, and this is the same side of one puppet, the sun and moon. And some trees that they made. We did a show all about insects one year. We just are, we're amateur naturalists, and we love the world around us, and so we are fascinated by insects. I don't know if anyone else is, but in this room, but we found endless fascination with making things. So we started pushing the limits of what we could do with cardboard more and more, and we still are doing that. But this giant millipede here is about 30 feet long, and we came up with a system of connecting PVC to the back so that you can, if it's spaced, along the pieces of cardboard, you can get an incredible amount of fluidity in the cardboard pieces. And this snail is also made out of cardboard. That was a real trick to make, because it's three-dimensional, and just bending it and trying to figure out the physics of a natural spiral is really quite difficult. But then the body emerges, and it snails its way off. They were actually walking like this for many feet. It was puppetry is suffering, is what we like to say. We made some grasshoppers on bike. We really sort of want to have a lot of fun with this particular show, so we did these breakdancing dung beetles. And that's their giant earth ball. And we're not saying that the earth is poop, but we just happened to have this earth ball, and we did these. It's this great ball that you can run up on and jump on and do tricks on and things. And so we just had a blast with that. And we would bring out a piece of cardboard, because the whole show is themed around that, and lay it out. And we had some pretty spanking moves. I wish you guys could have seen that. There's me right there, being like, what? A stag beetle battle? Yeah. Then we did some grandmother spider stories, again, bringing it back to tying in our condition here as modern humans with that, and how it links back to our stories that connect around the world. So every culture has a puppetry tradition or a mask-making tradition, if you look back. And when we looked around and we found all these stories of the grandmother spider, and it has different names around the world, there was a real draw to make this giant spider, which then had her face kind of split open. These are reflectors from bicycles for the eyes, and again, all plastic bags and things for the legs. But then she would start spinning her tails, and as these things came out, we had recorded voices of all these women telling stories of grandmother spider stories. And so it had this sound of that. It was really eerie and kind of a beautiful moment. But the stories, as they kept coming out, it was a beautiful thing, but people got wrapped up in the stories, and then it became kind of a whole nother level of meaning. But in some ways, we like to, again, we have the message, but we don't like to overspell things out. It's really important to me when we create these shows, to speak in the language of dreams, and to create imagery that allow people to be engaged and involved, but then to let them fill in their own story. Because I don't think anyone likes to really be spoon-fed a message. And I think definitely not. This giant butterfly we made for that insect show as well. We talk a lot about overpopulation. Seems like a problem. I don't know. We just talk about it. This is a cardboard goddess named Tiamat. We did a piece all about memory and how memory is stored in our bodies, and what we would do is have the person enter as the masked character, and we would have cardboard flats, painted flats, sort of as the narration would happen. The flats would illuminate the story that was happening in these, we call them the grand people, in their mind. and this piece evoked a lot of tears from our audience because it spoke about being near the end of life, and just it triggered a lot of people's memories of their own grandparents and etc. This is a lion. I'm getting good here. This is a lion. Yeah. This is a goat in a boat and afloat on a sea of information. So basically this library scene in a show called Islands Unknown that we did a few years ago, this little girl comes upon this magical library that appears, and the goat is the librarian, and occasionally as the goat... 5? Okay. Yeah. The goat can't help himself. He eats the pages out of the books. This is we recreated the Gyre, which is a giant island of trash in the middle of the ocean. I don't know if you all have heard of it, but we had Poseidon rise up out of what would Poseidon look like if he rose out of the giant sea of our island of trash. And so he rose up like this and to this little girl, and then we had we had him cry tears of oil that came out of his eyes there. But we always end on a hopeful message, so we brought in these triangles and we created a Bucky ball, which is a Buckminster Fuller map of the world that is supposedly one of the truest to actual dimensions of the world. And it comes in these triangular pieces, and when the final piece snaps in, it lights up like this. And we make shadow puppets. So I wanted to try on a few things. I mean, literally, how long do you?
We're trying to get a few questions into, so maybe just.
Yeah. Well, let me just. Would you guys like to see me put on a few puppets, or? Yeah. Okay. Well, these are some of the shadows. You can look at those up here. Oh, I wanted to get to this part of childhood. This is my baby. I mean, I couldn't talk about childhood this morning without bringing some pictures of my baby. So there she is. She, oh my God. She's a redhead, and she loves her little bunnies. And these are some of our most recent puppets. And this was the dome that we made for the plaza for kids to crawl around in. And it's layers of the earth. This is me as a kid, basically showing my early signs of art and revolutionary tendencies. The stain on the shirt is especially true to point to this day. So I'll try one on here and let you guys get a sense of what you can do with, I guess, a little bit of cardboard and paper mache. Piece of cloth. We've all met this guy, but I hope you haven't met him lately. Hmm? So what I did just there is something that I like to illustrate, is that a mask is often a neutral thing, and that by changing your body language, I don't know if you saw the face change when I hold my body a different way. It allows for the face to morph in your mind's eye very much, because most of the conversations that we're having with each other are happening on different levels and not just our words. And I just think that's a fascinating thing. It's one of the things that drew me to making masks and doing puppetry. And I think this guy's awfully fun. Let's see. Well, I think that I've gone over time. Thanks for listening to my story about Paperhand and how I've gotten here. I really appreciate you all having me. Thanks to everyone. And have a great rest of your day.